Hello, I'm Kat Finch, and welcome to the latest episode of the ServiceNow UK and I Executive Circle Podcast series. Within our podcast, we speak to some of the industry's most exciting innovators, thought leaders, and senior executives, all with the aim of giving you, our listeners, the inspiration, insights, and market intelligence you need to help drive your organisation forward.
Today, we're joined by Jacqueline McGirr, the VP of Global Change and Employee Experience from Kerry Group. Welcome, Jackie.
Morning, Kat. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. And thank you so much for joining us today. For our listeners, let me tell you a little bit about Kerry Group. So you've got over 50 years of experience in taste, nutrition and food science, with a portfolio spanning food, beverage, biotech, pharma and proactive health. But perhaps could you give us a little bit more of an intro into your own role and what you do for Kerry Group, please, Jackie?
Sure. Yeah, so we are just over 50 years old, global organisation, 21,000 employees. Very proud Irish heritage, started in County Kerry, as the name of the organisation suggests. My role, so VP of GBS, Employee Experience and Change. So what does that mean? So back in, I think it was just about 5 or 6 years ago, we looked at our HR operating model, and we moved and changed that much more to 3 main core pillars. So HR, business partners, strategic partnering, COEs, so reward, talent, and OE, and then GBS. So the predominance of my role is GBS, or Global Business Services Organization. And that's the leg of that I look after, partner with the teams on, is the employee experience work stream. We have 2 centres, one based in Mexico, one based in Malaysia. And I suppose where we've come from as we've gone through that journey with the HR operating model is looking absolutely at what we can do within the centres and how we can actually automate and enhance the employee experience at the same time. So that's my role. Another little add-on that I have there is change, and that is change within the full global business services. That's across all work streams, which is employee experience, finance, supply chain, customer care, etc. So making sure that we capture change and we communicate it and manage it effectively within our centres.
Amazing. A huge role. I mean, you've been at Kerry Group for over 20 years.
I had 24 years. I joined as a graduate in one of our production facilities in Northern Ireland, and I've been lucky enough to spend my career working across 4 functions. So I started in finance, spent time in IT, spent time in internal audit, and now in HR. So I've been very lucky during my time at Kerry. And I was lucky enough, I've spent 4 of those years in APMEA, so based in Sydney, Australia.
Amazing.
So yeah, very, very lucky.
I think that's what's been so brilliant about your career and your role, is that you've really looked at that interlink between HR and IT. Often those teams can work very, very siloed, but it feels like Kerry Group has really understood that connection between the two, looking at the type of technology that the HR team needs and vice versa. Do you feel that's quite unusual for organisations today?
I think it is, and I think it's difficult because you really need both. You really need the understanding of the technology without the real techie background. You need to understand what the technology needs to do and enable, and also then what that means from an experience perspective, because you can get very detailed into all different steps within an actual application or an IT system. Then when you're actually in the receiving end of it, you go, hang on a second, this doesn't make any sense, doesn't really work out. Made sense when we talked about it in the back end. So both sides of that is really important. And I think it's becoming much more emergent now within organizations. I can see some of my peer companies and some people I partner with in those companies, that they're starting to see that is much more important as well.
I think it's absolutely fascinating to hear about that evolution of the employee experience at Kerry Group. And obviously it's going to continue to evolve with technology like AI coming into it. Can you tell us a bit more about the journey you've been on the last couple of years and where you see it going?
Yeah, so when we did change our operating model, we obviously had to think very differently about how employees and managers and even our HR colleagues got support. So previously they would have knocked on the door of their HR person in their plant or even in the offices. So that had changed dramatically when we moved a lot of our activities to the shared service centres. So we implemented Ask HR. It's now called Ask Kerry. We now share that with IT, so we make it much more simple. That is our employees get support overall. And it's really important that we think about that journey. So if someone needs help with a pay slip, someone needs a maternity policy, or if someone is moving geographically and there's lots of different things that have to be done, it needs to be as simple as possible. We haven't quite nailed it, I'd say. We've sort of iterated through it. And I think now, as we're looking at AI and what that can help us with, we have to think about those experiences and those touch points, and where we can get more value out of that experience side, as well as the automation in the back end. So really, really key. I'd say on the joiners, movers, leavers, so we have just implemented onboarding at the end of last year. And that's helped us streamline processes where we have lots of different touch points. We've touch points with IT, we've touch points with finance, all sorts of things when an employee joins us. So we've implemented onboarding, but we're looking now to further automate more and how we can make that joined up with the mover process and the leaver process. And again, touching all those key sort of other functional areas that need to be updated as part of those journeys as well.
That's brilliant. So you sort of see automation as the starting point on that journey, and where will that go? Because if we think about those milestone moments in your career, like having to ask for a maternity policy, things like AI and the predictive intelligence that it can bring can really enhance what that looks like. So yeah, I'd love to know where that's going for Kerry Group.
Totally. And we're working with our teams at the minute and centres to think about that. So we constantly use term walk in my shoes. So someone's asking for a maternity policy, we need to be congratulating them. We need to support them through difficult times in their lives and their career as well. But I think AI is much more part of our conversations now than it was before. So what can we use AI for? And very much the question of why not AI? Now, there's still a hesitance and a reluctance there because a lot of what we do, particularly in our service centres, is there's data input and we maybe don't have all of our systems joined up with integrations. So we have to make sure that we're doing it right because we could have a big impact on a payroll or somewhere else. So we're generally checking and rechecking, which is something that we do. And I think we need to think about how AI can help us, one, with the automation, and two, with the checking. How can we get the checking right as well? So that we are compliant with everything that we need to be, but we're also efficient, right? Because right now, there's some of the big programs of work, payroll and otherwise, where we have to make sure that we're integrating systems from end to end. That brings huge benefits, but it also brings other complexities that we have to educate people what all those various data elements do and what they impact upstream and downstream. Or maybe they didn't have to think about that before because somebody was keying it into another system for them. So they didn't need to worry about that field. So from an AI perspective, what can we do to help automate that? And then obviously the governance and the checking is something that is very much front of mind with us.
Yeah, that kind of human-led decision-making and the checking. And we talk about human in the loop, obviously. Do you think that's more prevalent when AI is being used for HR and employee experience? It's like you said there, okay, congratulating someone on maternity leave. But of course, with things like bereavements, AI is not necessarily going to capture that kind of human emotion of what needs to come across to an employee. Do you think that human in the loop and AI discussion is more important from when it comes to HR?
I think it is. And it's interesting to say that actually, because there's sometimes what we've seen within our centres and across the industry in general has been that we focus a lot on SLAs. It's all about the SLA. And sometimes we forget about the experience, right? Because we're going through the motions and following the scripting or the job or the work instructions around how to actually do what's been asked. We sometimes forget about the emotion, even the human. And so I think AI can actually help with reminding a little bit about the human. You still do need, or the sensitivity and the empathy, you still do need that human interaction. But I think there should be with the implementation and evolution of AI that we need to be thinking much more about experience KPIs than just an SLA KPI. There's efficiency and there's experience that we haven't quite nailed without AI. And I really think there's an opportunity for us to help us with it.
I love that. It's a great way of thinking about it, having AI and the automation to solve the tick box SLAs, and then they can give the human the power to be able to spend the time on the experience. I think that's a great way of looking at it. But from, thinking about employees and the skills they need and the evolution of that technology like AI, what are you doing to help skill and upskill your employees in using the new technology?
So this is an interesting one, and I think we're sort of at the cusp of it at the moment. So something we all need to own. I think there's a fear that robots are going to take our jobs away, right? So we need to be communicating about that now, that it's not going to take the jobs away. It's going to make them different. It's going to help with the repeatable, scalable, busy stuff. But it also gives other opportunities. And I think we need to be starting to look at all those roles right across all organizations. So what is that role made up of today? What are they going to be doing that's the same in the future? What are they not going to be doing anymore? And what do they need to know that's new, right? And I think the more we start talking about that, rather than it be the robots are going to take our jobs, I think it will be much more resonating for people, because they may think, actually, the bit that's going away is the bit I really liked. And now I need to think about something different. Or, no, I'm really interested in that new stuff, or I'm really interested in the stuff I have to do a little bit differently. But I don't think we completely know that. And it is about going down to each of those roles, all the roles across the organization, and remapping the skills. And that might be 5 years in the future, might be closer, but at least they're starting to have those conversations. So we're thinking about it at the moment, and we're communicating with our employees around the fact that this is helping in terms of the workload and everything they have at the moment. And there's exciting opportunities that will come out of that as well.
Definitely. I think that sort of leaps and bounds ahead of many. I think we talk so easily about, AI is going to allow you to do higher value parts of your job. But like you say, if you don't understand each individual job, you don't know what's high level. And actually, they might not want to do the high level. They might. Exactly. So it's very, it's a very important discussion. It's amazing that you're having that already with your employees.
Yeah, I think we're on the verge of starting to look at it in terms of the skills across all, and it's supply chain, it's finance, it's HR, it's all of it. We need to start looking at that level, but really just trying to give comfort to employees that it's not about the robots doing everything and there's no job for you anymore. It's more about that it's going to be different, and we need to look at that. We need to talk about it with everybody.
Definitely. And do you think organizations like Kerry Group and how you're using AI and technology is going to become a big sort of selling point in terms of that talent acquisition, and how, when people are looking for jobs, they're going to want to go to an organization that's using technology, but in the right way? Yeah,
I think this is really important, because the generation coming in now, and I can't even remember whether they're Z or what generation they are now. They're just a different generation. But they are used to working with AI the whole way through university, in their own lives, day to day, on their phones. Everything's quick, fast. I want now. I get 2-minute bite. So they're not going to want to come into organizations where that is not being used, and that's not how their day or their week or their month goes. So from a talent acquisition and bringing new talent in for the future, we definitely need to be geared up for that, to provide them those tools in the way that they need to work and they want to work. There'll be stuff like Copilot that is, the day-to-day. And then there will be other pieces that will be much more intrinsic in their own roles. But I think it's super important. So there's that piece, and then there's also the experience piece again. So again, looking back to, I've got a job, here's my contract, I want an offer, I've signed it, here's my bank details, and I don't have to do multiple forms and 16 steps to do things. So that's where AI can help us with that. And make sure, similarly, when we have people who decide to move on from Kerry and leave us, that we offboard them in the right way, with a good experience for that employee, and on our side, that we're compliant and we've got access to systems cut and all the various payroll elements that have to happen as well. So definitely a huge opportunity there for that whole life cycle.
Definitely. And I think it's a harder task nowadays, isn't it? We're such multi-generational workforces. Like you say, we're going to have Generation Alpha coming in, and for them, AI is just intuitive. It's just part and parcel of their everyday life. And for those of us who are obviously getting older but still in the workforce, it's not a natural learning thing. Like, we probably do have to sort of sit down and go, right, I'm going to learn how to do this as part of my job. So it must be really difficult in a role like yourself, looking across that broad generational workforce.
Definitely. I'm one of those older ones, I'd say, and I'd say I'm probably a good test model for trying to do it on the older ones and how we could get upskilled, because it isn't easy. We don't learn in the same way. And thinking about that within my role as a leader, and obviously within the teams that are beneath me, yeah, it's very, very different.
And so looking toward the future and what's next and what's coming, either for Kerry Group or just even sort of hypothetical on what you're seeing out in the industry, agentic AI, there's lots to come. What sort of like in your crystal ball and what you're thinking about?
Yeah, so agentic AI is really interesting again. And I think for us, it's thinking about how we can further streamline and automate those little tasks and having the AI agent make decisions, right? That's completely out of our comfort zone. As I said, we check and we recheck, but making sure that we have that working right. And I think in the future, it'll be really interesting, because I think we'd start to see these AI agents in our org structure, right? So we'll have an org structure that have AI agents with humans managing the tasks that they do and managing the performance, managing what else they can take on, all of that good stuff. Really, really different dynamic to that. That's what I see the AI agents and the whole agentic helping with. What we need to do for that is we need to look at where we have, I think, processes that are maybe non-standard that we've kind of just accepted before. Okay, there's this subtle thing here that's different and something different over there that we kind of build into our process. We need to be really rigorous on that going forward. And why do we need this difference? Is it okay? Because we can't have that as part of the standardization. And we also need to be thinking about all of those various tasks and the processes we do. I know a couple that we've looked at last week, and I was kind of like, really? Is that why we do that? And why do you get the email? And well, I do it because I approve the workflow. But why do you need to approve the workflow? Just asking those sorts of questions rather than this is what it is on the page and this is what we do. I think right across all of our roles, we need to be looking at the roles, as I said, and look at the skill set today, what the skill set is required for the future. So what's the stop, start, continue, if you like. That's what we need to start to do. But for me, from a GBS perspective, I think there's a lot of potential. It's really interesting. So moving much more from a transactional hub to a strategic enabler. So today, GBS is transitional, efficiency, payroll, onboarding, data, et cetera, et cetera. I think there's an opportunity for global business service organizations to become a center of enablement. So embedding that automation, data intelligence, and digital capabilities into HR service delivery. But probably, as I said, we don't even have some of our systems that talk to each other at the moment. So that's the basics, but this is on top of that. So they're not just run services. They could help design, optimize, and scale them using AI and automation. And it's about co-owning that employee experience and thinking again about moving to the experience KPIs than just the have we met our SLAs? Have we met our SLAs? Right? I think there's also an opportunity to accelerate the automation AI ownership. So the GBS centers could be the hubs for embedding those tools, trying them out, thinking about them, where could they work? And we're going through a few of those sort of use cases at the moment within our centers. So it becomes like the engine room. So can we try it out in here and see if it works everywhere else? And a couple of other things, I think data. So we fought with data, and data's wrong, data's right, and where's data wrong, and how do we make sure it's right? So if we have the automation in place and we have all of the various elements there that make sure that it's right, and that we're fulfilling all of our requirements for external and the internal reporting. So GBS could manage those talent intelligent platforms and the analytics dashboards and become much more of a partnership than just producing the reports and checking all the data is correct. And I think just finally for me, it is that elevation of high touch in service delivery. So we said earlier about it's AI and the human on the human element and the employee experience, and shift from that whole SLA driven piece to experience driven agreements and SLAs. I think they're the things that I can see. I don't think they're that far away. It's just about focusing on them and making them priorities and starting to look at them within the organization.
Definitely amazing. And is what you're doing and testing and things impacting the customer experience as well? Because it sounds like from an HR internal and employee experience, you are ahead of the game. Are you working and sharing that with how the Kerry Group works externally with its customers as well in similar ways?
I know the commercial teams are starting to look at this, and there's another thing in Kerry. We have established an AI governance forum. So it's only a few months old at this stage, but we're making sure that we've got the right governance around policy. So what is the employee's responsibility with AI? And making sure that we've got that whole governance around the policy creation and sharing of that. So that covers all work streams. That's not just employee experience, but it's made up of IT, HR, internal audit, data protection, or legal, all of the relevant teams that would be involved in that. So, and I would say we're probably not ahead of the game. We're thinking ahead of the game. We just need to move behind what we're thinking about. And everything that we've done so far in Kerry, we're following in the tail of ICT. So they're obviously service delivery as well. So we're looking at all of the various things that they're doing and piloting and trialing as well. One of the other things that we think just in the short term that we might get some benefit out of is as we go through the large programs of work. So I mentioned payroll, I mentioned data and offboarding, some of those things. We could use AI to help us with the real basics that take a lot of time in programs like test scripts. So creation of test scripts, automation of test scripts, data conversion, sort of stuff that can take weeks, months sometimes, that we can utilize AI to help us with, that will get us to where we need to be quicker from a technology perspective, but then obviously think about that from an experience perspective side as well.
I think sometimes you've got to think about the experience as a whole, isn't it? Not necessarily the employee experience and then the customer experience, but actually just, as we all know, happy employees is going to make a better customer experience. So it's just experience as a whole, really, isn't it?
Exactly.
Brilliant. And so obviously, over 20 years at Kerry Group as one of the key leaders, what advice or sort of inspiration, can you give others in your role, your peers, or in other roles that you feel they need to take on when they're thinking about AI?
I think it's just about being curious, listening to what's going on externally. So that's definitely networking externally with other organizations, the likes of yourselves and ServiceNow and other technology providers as well. I think it's listening externally, but also listening internally. So a lot of the stuff I hear internally sometimes is as basic as the experience wasn't great, and when you start to equate that to, well, how could we make that better and where could AI help with that? That's where I think you can start to move the dial little increments at a time, but it can help move there quicker if you keep doing lots of little bits than, okay, we want to do everything in employee experience through AI. So definitely the external perspective and listening to what's happening in the market and externally, and listening internally to the customers that you have and trying to equate how you would problem solve some of those things and where AI could help. That would be my recommendation.
That's amazing. Jackie, thank you so much for joining us on today's podcast. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Kat. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the ServiceNow UK&I Executive Circle podcast. If you've enjoyed this or any of the other episodes of this podcast series, please do take a moment to rate or review us on your podcast platform of choice. We'd love your feedback. Finally, I'm Kat Finch, the host of the ServiceNow UK&I Executive Circle podcast. Thank you again for listening, and speak with you again soon.